Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Originally, I wanted to make a video about my favorite generation of iPod Nano, the 5th gen. The problem is, once I plugged it in and let it charge throughout the day, it developed the black spot of death. As you can probably see here, the battery expanded and started to push the glass screen out of the case. So now I'm trying to replace its battery, which according to many people online is really hard. So let's join me on this journey. Okay, so I've gathered all of my tools to do this repair. First of all, my trusty hot air station to heat up the glue, and I 3D printed some pry tools to get the battery out of the case. I have the new battery, I have screwdrivers, I have more pry tools in here, I have isopropanol alcohol to also soften up the glue. Off screen I also have the iFixit tutorial for this iPod model. So let's see how it goes. So first we need to get rid of these two end pieces here on the bottom and the top of the iPod Nano. Okay, so there's some glue underneath, and since I already have my hot air station here, I think I'm just going to use it. Maybe set it to 100 degrees and let's see if that softens up the glue a bit. Okay, let's try it again. Ooh, much better. Yes. Okay, now let's try the top part. Okay, I had some trouble finding an entry point here, but using my fingernail I managed to get my pry tool underneath. And now it seems to come off easily. No, it adhered down again. Okay, I take that back. Okay, let's heat it up again. I mean, of course you don't have to go as slow as I'm going here, but this iPod is in very, very good condition, so I don't want to scratch it. Okay, I think I can now remove it. There's some strong glue underneath here. Now let's remove the screws that are located on the top and bottom of the case. Now the top part here should be free. The thing is, you have to be very careful with the next step because there is still a flex cable connected to this hold switch here. So let's see. Okay, there's still some glue left and I removed it. Okay, next step is to remove this bracket because you have to slide the whole iPod down through the bottom opening here basically. And if you don't remove this metal part here, the probability that it's going to catch on something and rip this tiny flex cable here is very high. So we're going to remove that. Good, so now we have the metal bracket removed. Next step is to remove all of the screws on the bottom. They're actually different sizes, so the longest one is here in the middle and the shorter ones are on the left and right side here. Now the next step would be to get rid of the display glass, which if your battery isn't expanded is probably very hard and involves heat, but I can already see an edge on mine, so I think it's not going to be that hard. But I still will add some heat and try to not crack the glass. I'm also very conservative because I really don't want to heat up the battery any more than I need. Yeah, now I just slide my fingernail in here to remove the glass, but you can also of course use any pry tool. Maybe I actually use one of the 3D printed PLA strips here that I prepared for this task. So my idea was to use them to cut through the glue, which does appear to be working. Good, so I actually removed the glass now. Next we have to remove this metal part here. Okay, and the next step is actually to remove the click wheel. You might be able to see that the click wheel is held in here at the top. So after heating it up we can try to push up through the case from here to get it to lift up. Then we should be able to get a pry tool underneath and lift the whole click wheel out. The problem is you don't really have that much space in there because there's the dock connector here. You only have a few millimeters where you can push something in and try to pop the click wheel out. Okay, I got it. Now we have to be very careful to not damage the connector. Okay. Click wheel is actually removed. And now we also have to remove this part here, this plastic part, which is the support for the click wheel, but it also stops the iPod from sliding out. So next we have to remove this camera glass here, because underneath is another pin that is holding the iPod mainboard in and would prevent us from sliding it out. So my idea is to use heat and then use a needle to kind of push this panel out of the way. Oh no, my needle snapped. Okay, that's bad. And then now I have it in my finger. This iPod wants to fight me, I guess. Okay, but we managed to get it out. So this is the small bracket that we removed. And this here is the pin that is holding the mainboard in place. So we have to also get rid of that. And now we should actually be able to slide everything out of the case. The problem now is only that, as you've seen before, my battery is expanded. So I have to do something against that. And there is also a bit of glue on the back side here. And first I'm going to try to get rid of the glue using my PLA strips here. And if I did that, I want to put the iPod into the freezer to maybe get the battery to contract a little bit and allow me to slide it out freely. But in the worst case, I actually have to puncture the battery from above here. I've seen a video where someone does that, but I'm a bit scared to do that. So let's hope I don't have to. Okay, I can feel the resistance where the battery glue is. Question is, can I actually remove it? I really hate this repair actually. You always have to make sure that you don't rip this little flex cable here. It's always in the way. You don't have space to do anything here. It's wild. I mean, I love the iPod Nano, but come on. Nice. Of course, the iPod Nano is very sharp here and now cuts into my hand. This iPod really wants to fight me. I would hope that this is enough. Now I'm going to put it in the freezer and then we can try to slide it out. Okay, so here's my frozen iPod Nano. Let's see if we can actually get the battery out now. And it is stuck. So I will put it in the freezer again. Let's see if I can remove the battery now. Whew. Oh my gosh. It's actually out and you can see how puffed up the battery actually is. So let's plug in our click wheel again and see if the iPod is still working. Especially the screen. Because I mean, for the screen, I did have to apply vast amount of pressure to get it to slide out of the case. So if I would do this again, I maybe actually would try to puncture the battery. So moment of truth. Oh no. We did generate some stuck pixels, but I've been told you can just rub them out. So I will have to try that. But yeah, in general, it looks like the iPod is still working. So let's unplug it before we get a fire here from our puffed up battery. The next step is to actually get rid of the battery. But just look how thin the new battery is compared to the one that we're taking out. That's crazy. Okay, so now let's remove our spicy pillow here. The issue here is that, of course, this battery is soldered in and glued in because this iPod is just a product from hell, I guess. So first we have to remove the Kapton tape here, desolder this old battery, solder in the new battery, add Kapton tape back and see if it actually charges. So let's do that. I have my soldering iron here, solder, and everything I need basically. So let's go. Let's remove the glue residue. I hate this so much. The battery is glued very well in here and I really don't want to puncture this already puffed up battery. It just feels like this whole iPod is just like a huge middle finger to anyone who wants to repair it. Okay, it looks like I actually removed all of the glue. Now we can fold this back and we finally have access to our soldering points. I mean, this would be easier if I wouldn't film it, of course. But where would the fun in that be? I did it! Oh my gosh, I actually did it. Good. Now we face the problem that there is still the flex cable for the hold switch attached. So let's remove that carefully and then peel back the battery. But you have to be careful because of course there is another flex cable underneath here that we don't want to rip, of course. So now we have our puffed up battery here and the new one to replace it. So first I have to make sure that the soldering pads here are clean and then we can solder in the new battery and test it out. Finally. Not beautiful, but it is going to work. Now let's add some Kapton tape so we don't get any shorts. I will also tuck this cable in here, the cable for the hold switch. And now we can actually test it to see if it will in fact charge. Seems to be booting. Then I will let this charge, and if it's completely charged, I think we can reassemble this iPod, finally, after who knows how many hours. So it's now later in the day and the iPod had time to fully charge. So first of all, let's see if it actually holds a charge if I unplug it. Okay, nothing happens, perfect. It still does hold a charge. So now I think it's time to reassemble it. I hope this is a bit easier than the disassembly process. First of all, I want to glue down the battery a bit. And I'm just going to use this Kapton tape here. Trimming off the excess, and as we can see, iPod is still working. Good. Now I think we can continue reassembling the iPod. So I will not add any new glue to the backside. There still is a fair bit amount of glue. What I'm going to do is I will use isopropanol to soften up this glue, and I hope that this will be enough. I will use new glue for the display, of course, and probably also for the end caps. Why is it such a process to disassemble and reassemble this iPod? You always have to make sure that this tiny flex cable here doesn't get squished or like ripped. Why is it stuck? The problem is actually in my replacement battery. So there are the battery contacts, and it looks like there is just a bit too much solder here, making the battery just too thick to slide back into the case. Question is if I can actually fix that without blowing up the whole battery. I guess we'll see. Okay, so now I actually resoldered the connection between the pouch battery cell and the battery management board over here. And I folded it over in a different way to get the PCB on this side, which at least from the side looks a bit slimmer. As you can see, the iPod is still working. Yeah, I think my main problem here was that I actually just bought the cheapest battery. So now let's actually slide it into the case, or let's try to slide it into the case and see if everything fits. It is finally in after hours. It is finally done. Or, I mean, let's be honest, it's not done. I have to put in the click wheel and screw everything back in, but that was such a horrible process. The only thing I want to do now is, you can see here that there are marks left on the screen, and I've read online that you can actually massage them out. They come from too much pressure on the screen. So I want to try that before closing up everything. So yeah, let's do that. That looks okay. So next I put in the camera glass. And now I think I should add the bracket for the hold switch again. Okay, then let's add the bottom bit here. And then we can do another test. So now that I've completely checked that everything is still working, we can glue the screen and the end caps back on. But first of all, I have to clean it a bit. Okay, now I can place the click wheel in. And I will also add a little bit of glue here to the side. This glue is called B7000 and it can be found at every online retailer like eBay or Amazon or whatever. It also has the wildest tagline. B7000 is a surprise adhesive force. This was a great adhesive, best-selling Europe and America, mad fans around the world. So let's see if we are going to be mad fans. So first remove the old glue and then add the new one. Okay, apparently this nozzle is already clogged. I will now try to use a toothpick to get the glue onto the right parts.
This was a great adhesive.
So lesson of the day is don't buy the absolute cheapest stuff to repair your iPod. Apparently it doesn't matter if there is glue seeping out a bit because you can just remove it. Now that the clickwheel is in, I can power the iPod off finally and we can assemble the screen. So let's press the screen in. Then we can remove the excess glue using, as usual, isopropanol. I think that actually looks quite okay. So I've also glued in the bottom bracket and am now going to glue in the top bracket. So let's add our world's best glue. I probably shouldn't put glue on this side actually, because there is the mechanism for our switch. Nice. So I finally did it. The iPod is back together after way too much time. So that's it. Here's the iPod in all its glory. It turned out way better than I expected. So do you think this is actually the hardest iPod to repair? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you're curious for a deeper dive into what makes this iPod special, consider subscribing and I'll see you next time.